Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, we are going to talk about price gouging and this article, LA real estate agent hit with first price gouging charges after fires wanted. I guess there's a state law that says you can't price gouge, you can't raise prices. How's that work? How's the law work?
Right. So the law says that you cannot raise prices for goods and services within 30 days of some sort of an emergency, more than 10%. So let me give you an example. So let's say that something costs $100. You can't charge more than $110 for that item within 30 days of that emergency. And the idea is that, to your point, that it doesn't promote price gouging. Now, there are exceptions to that. So one of the exceptions is, for example, if the good costs more to produce or the service costs more to produce. So let's say, for example, that you're talking about
Eggs.
Okay, I don't know how eggs exactly work. I don't know that chickens charge you more, but I was thinking more like that whatever good you make, when you buy the parts cost more. Okay?
Maybe you're being price gouged on the parts.
Well, I don't know about that, but for whatever reason, the parts cost you more. So now that item that maybe before cost you X now costs you X plus Y. So now that price can be, instead of $110, maybe because your cost has gone up, maybe you can charge $112 for it or something like that. So that's kind of the exception. What's special right now is that Governor Newsom made it much more far-reaching, because my understanding is that it doesn't sunset. So before, this would sunset for 30 days, right? You could not raise prices more than 10% for 30 days. But Governor Newsom put out an order that takes away that sunset clause, and I don't know when this expires. I don't know that anybody does.
Can the governor, if the legislature makes laws, can the governor just say, oh, this has a max, I'm getting rid of the max? Like, if there's a criminal penalty that has a statutory max, can the governor say, I'm making the max 10 years instead of 2 years because executive order? Can they actually do that? Can they? The state said 30 days. Can they make this forever? And what happens if they make it forever? Because what if I try to sell it? What if I'm renting a house today for $4,000 a month and I try to rent it next year for $5,000 because that's what rents are going for? Is the state going to come after me and say, oh, you can only raise rent $4,400 because that's 10%?
So one of two things will happen. Either the governor will, put an end to this, or someone will take the governor to court, and the court will opine on what this actually means. I really don't think that if somebody took it to court, because this is still going on longer than 30 days, that a court would uphold it, but that is up to a court to decide. Okay,
here's a quote for the article. It says, a real estate agent in Los Angeles County is the first person to face criminal charges for price gouging following the devastating wildfires that ravaged Southern California this month. The state's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, said California authorities are making good on their promise to hold price gougers accountable, with more to come. They did issue 500 warnings. Now we did a whole video on this. There's a Google Doc with 2,500 instances from Zillow and Redfin where the prices were changed between the 6th of January and the 15th of January. Mm-hmm. Price of rent, it was listed for $8,000 a month. Now it's $12,000 a month, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So this is kind of
like, what determines gouging and what determines fair market value? Because isn't honestly fair market value's just gone up because there's more demand?
So I would agree with you. Fair market value is what a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to accept by definition. And the fact that you are freezing prices, because that's what this is. This is a government price freeze for 30 days. Maybe I can say, okay, fine, I can sort of appreciate that under the circumstances. But longer than that, it really is detrimental, because at that point, the government is actually, in a sense, seizing your property, because you no longer have full control of your property, and it's seizing your property without compensation and without just cause. So that becomes kind of a different thing too. And so someone somewhere, and California is very litigious, someone somewhere is going to take the governor to task and put an end to it if it goes on too long.
I guess the agent did an interview with Newsweek or something, and one of the things they said was the reason they raised the price. One of the reasons is because of, I guess they first thought it was in a different school district, but when they realized it was in a more affluent or better school district, that it could command more. But then they said they also rented the house furnished instead of unfurnished. So talk about that really quick. You've got a house that rents for normally, let's say, $8,000 a month unfurnished, and now you want to rent it for $10,000 a month furnished. How does the government then determine if you're price gouging? You could say, I just put like all this money in furnishing. So because their house burned down, they don't have any furniture. So I furnished the house for them, but I'm charging them more rent. How do you deal with that?
So I think that, look, at this point, this is just a complaint against this agent, and when it gets adjudicated, if it even goes that far, I think all of that will come into play. I think this was simply, he drew the short straw, unfortunately, and the government's kind of making an example of him as a cautionary tale for other agents and landlords. To your point, in this particular circumstances, nothing will probably come of this because of the things that you mentioned. But I think this is more, to the point that the Attorney General said that, we're making an example of this. Well, first of all, making an example of somebody is not really, it's not fair to the person being accused.
It doesn't help the public, meaning it's scapegoating. It does not help the consumer who's having to pay more for goods and services. Okay,
it's designed to help the government look like they're doing something. Let's kind of face what this is. This is about public optics, and that's the whole thing with the spreadsheet and with setting up a website to articulate complaints and to upload. And they're giving people instructions of upload screenshots of social media, of websites, include links, include all these things, do all this research, and upload all of this. Well, that's a lot of energy. That's a lot of money spent on this. Yeah. It's a lot of money spent by the government to track all this down and do all these things. In an environment where maybe that money could be better spent to either deal with the victims of the fire or prevent future fires. That's just my opinion.
Okay, here's the scenario. Let's say you and I live next door to each other in houses, and we own the homes, but across the street, we each have a rental. It's just across the street from us. And you have a tenant, your house has been on the market for, say, $4,000 a month for the last month. And you decide you want to raise it to $5,000. You say, hey, I'm going to raise the price of my rental to $5,000. And you get a letter from the state. And the state says you can't only raise the price by 10%. So you say, the state told me I can only raise the price 10%. So I raised it to $4,400, but now I've got like 30 people want to rent the house. And they're all offering to pay me more, but I can only really rent it maybe for $4,400.
Well, no, you can only, they're offering, they all want to rent it. They're all well qualified, and you only have one house to rent. So how, as a landlord, are you to decide which tenant to choose?
It's a good question.
Okay. So if you're selling a house, what do? We do multiple offers, and we do highest and best.
Right.
Well, is it reasonable to do the same with a rental?
Okay, well, here's a question. Let's say somebody goes, I'll pay you $5,000 because I really need to move the house. And you go, okay, I'll agree to that. And then as soon as they move in, they complain to the state saying, you rented the house for $5,000. It's 20+% more, 25% more than you had it. And I'm upset. I want them to lower the price and do that. How do you can you get around that? Or is that just, are they going to now go after the landlord because maybe you made the offer and said, hey, look, I'll give you $5,000.
So, that's going to be something that, again, has to be adjudicated, and we'll see what the governmental body decides. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Now, the problem with that is that as a landlord, it may cost you more to defend against that than what you're getting in rent. So then at that point, you may just say, you know what? It is more economically feasible for me to lower the rent than go through having this fight with this tenant. You have to be pragmatic.
Okay, here's another scenario. Now I decide that my tenant moved out. And let's just say it was, for the sake of argument, it wasn't a tenant. It was one of my adult children living there basically for free. I just said you can move in the house, but he decides to move. So I say, you know what? I'm going to put my house on the market for $5,000 because I'm not changing the price. It's a new offering, 5,000. So in theory, I could get a tenant for 5,000, but the most you could get is 4,400. But they're identical houses right next to each other. How does that make sense? And is that even late? Is that like, is for California law, does that even make sense? Like,
So I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on YouTube or anywhere else.
okay.
Just a casual observer of California.
Mm-hmm. Very casual. From a
Very
distance.
casual,
From
from a
Nevada,
distance.
we look
Yes.
across the border at it.
Yes. And we stay here. Look, California has all kinds of rules and regulations, and at some point you have to be kind of pragmatic. The question is, will you be able to get a tenant for that? And if you are, what does that look like? If that tenant wants to stay there long term, then that tenant is unlikely to cause you difficulties, because that tenant hopefully understands that come lease renewal, you may decide to go in a different direction with the property, and that may not include that tenant. So as a tenant, I'm thinking, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to be grateful that I found a nice home to put my family in and get on with my life. So that's a consideration. I think it depends on the landlord. I think it depends on the tenant, and I think it depends on the overall circumstance. There are a lot of variables in there. At the end of the day, anybody can launch a complaint about anything, and then
especially in California,
and then the person against whom the complaint was launched has to defend, and defending is expensive. This is part of the reason why a lot of people decide not to become landlords. If you guys remember, there was a movie back in, I think, the 80s called Pacific Heights.
Oh my God. Okay. Michael Keaton.
Oh, so if you want to watch a movie about...
It's a great movie.
How frightening it can be to be a landlord, watch Pacific Heights. Great movie.
What was the best thing about the movie was Michael Keaton, up to that point, had always played a comedy, light, very funny. He was known as like more of a comedy actor, and he's not a funny guy. Like he's a bad guy in this. And he was really a good movie, but yeah, it was. I think it scared a lot of people into being. But it was Pacific Heights is a very affluent part of San Francisco.
Yes.
Okay. I did find this. There is this thing about, and I'll just read it to you. The asking price for rentals not previously advertised can't exceed 160% of the fair market rent established by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This depends on the bedroom size of the rental unit. So let's say I have a house that rents in my neighborhood go for $4,000 a month. But I happen to have a house that I have the one lot that actually you can see the ocean. Like you have an ocean view, and it's a really big lot. Because remember, it only says here, depends on the bedroom size of the rental unit. I have a pool. It's fully furnished. I just did a full rehab, and I want to charge, instead of charging $4,000, which is what everyone else in the neighborhood charges, I want to charge $8,000. According to this, I can't do that, even though I could probably line up people all day to pay $1,000 to rent that view of the ocean and the pool and the big house or the big yard and everything, because the bedroom size and the other houses in the neighborhood, maybe on smaller lots, don't have pools.
Sure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So a couple of things. First of all, most landlords wouldn't know where to find this information and wouldn't be privy to it. So we kind of start there.
Oh, let me just interrupt you. I've never heard of that. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, but it's not something I've ever looked at, because I function from the principle of what the market will bear. What a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to accept. So that's the way I function. So whatever government guidelines there are for pricing have not been very, very relevant to the way I conduct business, because if something doesn't sell, doesn't rent, doesn't whatever, then we lower the price. If we get multiple offers, then we take the highest and best, whether it's a rental or a sale. So I'm fine with that. That works pretty well. I'm a fan of the free market. Now, to your point, as far as this house is concerned, I think at the end of the day, if it's a landlord, if it's a private person trying to rent out the house, they wouldn't even know about any of this, and they're going to rent the house for whatever they see fit. And again, they're probably going to operate on the same principle of, let's see how much I can get for the house and who's willing to rent it, and then we go from there. If it's a real estate professional, that is a different ball game, right? Because real estate professionals are licensed, they're educated, they are up to date with the different laws, so they have a different standard of care, right? And they have different responsibilities. So a real estate agent is going to have to know these things, and but again, at the end of the day, the real estate agent works for their client. So they will put the house on the market for whatever they see fit. They will probably have some disclosure for their client that says, hey, you know, fair market rent for your property in this area is this many bananas. I understand you want to rent it for this, just so you know, that's what's going on. And then they'll move forward from there. If somebody launches a complaint, then they'll deal with it. But it's like with anything else, you know, until somebody complains, for the most part, everybody goes about their business the way the market is supposed to operate. The market is efficient and the market figures it out. The fact that the government is putting their thumbs on the scale and having all these loud conversations out in public, I think is just more for optics than what is reflected in the real world.
In the thousands of houses that we have sold, flipped, etc., where we listed the house, did you, in having the conversation with the seller or just us, like what are we going to sell it for, did it ever pop into your head that there might be some governmental limit that we could not, like, did this ever pop in, like, did you ever think about, oh my gosh, what if the government found out we were trying to make a $40,000 profit on a 30-day flip?
So the short answer is yes. So at certain price points where it's possible that your most likely buyer is an FHA buyer, then yes. You know,
quick, that's different though. How's the FHA flipping rule work?
Right. So within a certain amount of time, you can't make more than a certain amount of money on the property, because the idea is that FHA is backing the loan and providing the money, and so they want to make sure that the home is actually being sold for fair market value, kind of to your point, being sold for fair market value, and that the buyer isn't being gouged. However, FHA has an appraiser come out and appraise the property, so really I'm not sure how much that really is pertinent, but they do have this rule. It's called an anti-flipping rule, that you can't sell the property for more than so much money within 90 days of you purchasing the property. But most of the time that works out fine, because what happens is an investor will purchase the property, they'll go ahead and do renovations to the property, they'll put the property on the market, and it won't close until day 91. It's all good.
I've seen a bunch of them where they say no FHA, no VA.
Right.
And they say we won't consider those offers because, you know, we put 15 grand into it, because they make you show receipts, but we can charge 40 grand more because that's the value that we added. So we can't get that with an FHA. So they just say, hey, look, we're not going to accept those loans. You have to just go conventional if you want to buy the house. They just try to skirt the living room.
Right. So there are all kinds of ways to get around that.
Anyway, I'll let you have. I mean, I don't really like I think the market decides. I get it for certain things, you know, price gouging. You know, the government never, when they raise electric rates or water rates, they never go, oh, we're gouging the consumers. We can't raise your electricity by more than 5 or 10% a year. They raise it to wherever they want to. But if it's private citizens, then they feel compelled to like interfere with that and direct the value of your asset and stuff. But I'll let you have the final word.
So the final word is, how's life in California?
Yeah, except for I think, are the fires out? Or are they still? I got a message from a friend in San Diego, and he said he was looking at a fire. He said fires in the East County. He could see it from his house.
Well, we make fun of California, but we do feel sorry for the people that have been negatively impacted by the fires, obviously.
And the amazing houses, that a lot of beautiful homes are gone.
Well, and the homes can be replaced, but it's the contents of those homes that are really heartbreaking. We've talked about this before. People's photo albums and family heirlooms and things like that just can't be replaced. And so that is extremely sad, and we do have the utmost sympathy and compassion for those people. So, I make fun of California, but I don't make fun of the people that suffered through this. So I am truly sorry. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, leave us your real estate related comments. We appreciate them. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.